Today, I'm speaking with Emilya Naymark, the author of Behind the Lie. She was born in a country that no longer exists and escaped with her parents. She lived in Italy for a bit and ended up in New York, which promptly became a love and a muse. She has a particular fascination with psychological thrillers, crime and suspense, all the dark stuff, just like me. So that's what she writes. Her books have been a Sue Grafton Memorial Award finalist and a Silver Falcon Award finalist as well. Welcome, Emilya. It's so great to speak with you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
I loved Behind the Lie. It was so gripping and compelling, and I loved the characters, and I mean, I literally could not put it down.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
That's like music to my ears, of course.
It's your second psychological thriller. And you tell the story with 2 points of view. Laney Bird, who is a small town PI, and she was just trying to get away from her big city life as an NYPD detective. And Holly Dubois, the other character, is an artist turned caregiver turned housewife. And at the start, Holly disappears. And Laney is her best friend, and she is determined to find her. So can you set the story up a little bit for our viewers today?
Yeah, of course. So Lainey in the first book of the series, she's an NYPD detective, and you don't have to read the first book, but if I'm going to talk about her, she quits the NYPD and moves up to a small town because her idea is, a small town is going to be low crime, good schools. She had a teenager, so she just wants to be a good mom and take care of her kid. She ends up getting a job as a private investigator, which is actually a pretty common path for ex-NYPD up here anyway. And her specialty is, she's very good at finding missing people. She has like a knack for that. And it just so happens that the book begins with this gigantic block party that has like 600 people. And in the middle of this block party, her best friend and neighbor, who's like the exact opposite of her, and this like very charming, friendly, girly, wonderful mother and wife, vanishes. So the question arises, what happened? Because obviously her life was not as magical and perfect as Laney believed.
But
And
something else, sorry to interrupt, but something else happened at the beginning.
Yeah.
During the block party.
Yeah.
Walk us through that.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the block party, Holly's husband drives somebody's truck through his own front door and basically demolishes the house. And in the middle of all this, while everybody's like, what the hell just happened? His wife vanishes. So one thing to understand is that this is kind of a story of 2 women, but also a story of how women are forced to view themselves in society and the pressures that are put on women. Because in so many ways, we feel we have to excel at careers, at being mothers, at being spouses, at having a good house. And Laney is this person who just can't ever get it. She's divorced. Her kid is quirky and does not excel at things. And, her kitchen is always, there's never anything to eat in the house, and she can't figure out where all the food is going. There's a reason. the food is going somewhere.
Yeah.
But as far as she's concerned, she's like, I don't know how to achieve this place that I can see my best friend has achieved, apparently effortlessly, because Holly is kind of, at least on the surface, the opposite of that. She has this very loving husband. She has these perfect children. The food, she always cooks a lot and it's perfect. And she writes novels. She's a romance writer. So
Of
she writes
course.
like 3 novels a year. I mean, while doing all these other things. So the question is, does she ever sleep? And the answer is no. And there's a reason why she doesn't sleep, because
Yeah.
you just can't
You can't keep
maintain.
that up,
No,
right?
no.
No,
So,
absolutely not.
yeah.
And and I forgot to mention that Behind the Lie is book number 2, but you know what? I did not know that going into reading Behind the Lie, and I didn't need book 1 to be introduced to these characters. So, and Laney was, her backstory was, described quite well enough that, I mean, I didn't need, to know what happened in book 1. So I feel like you could totally read them out of order.
Yeah, I did do that very much intentionally, very much so.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I plan to read Hide and Place too,
Good.
because
Yeah.
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 So Laney dives deeper into this investigation, and she learns that her 15-year-old son is also somehow involved. And this raises the stakes for Laney because, well, I mean, and I connected so deeply with this. I've had kids, and my kids are grown now, but when you have a teenager in the house, things are, and so share your inspiration for Alfie.
So clearly, I also have a child, and it's a boy. And when I first started writing, I feel like all of this is like an exorcism, because it all starts out with, what am I going to do if this happens? Like, what if my kid did this? What if my kid did that? How am I going to handle that? And it's like these fears. And so you sit down and you just start writing, and a story is born. But it's not so much that Alfie is my son, it's that Laney's fears and feelings and vision of him is similar to how I view my son, and the ways in which I am afraid he might go wrong and I can't help him, or I won't be able to, or he won't let me because he's older, and he's a teenager. I mean, at this point he's 20, so different worries. That's going to be book 3,
Right.
but they're so, when they're teenagers, it's like they think they're already smart and they're already self-sufficient, and in many ways they have very much adult kind of bodies and heads and everything and opinions, and they're gonna do things that they want to do, and you might not know, and you might not be able to have any control over it.
Well,
They
and
might
that's
not
just it,
talk to you.
right?
So
That's just it. And they sometimes don't make the best choices.
they don't make the best choices, and they make choices based on their very, very limited experiences.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the scary part.
So talk a little bit about what happens, what Alfie gets involved with, if you don't mind.
So Alfie, without spoilers, Alfie falls in love with the wrong person.
Right.
For the right reasons.
And she turns out to be a little bit older too, which is
He's older.
yeah, which is
and that
any parent's fear. You don't want any teenager to fall in love with a 20-something,
So that was an interesting thing. I was wondering if people would kind of talk about that or think about that. And in general, nobody's blinking an eye about that part of the story, which
really
is kind of a relief. But I know that if it had been, I feel like if it had been the other way around, if Alfie was a girl who fell in love with like a 21 or a 22-year-old, there would have been, first of all, I think I would have had to write it different.
You would have heard about that.
Yeah. But there's something about it being a boy in love with maybe an immature older woman that people are just like not blinking an eye. But to me, it was an exploration that I wanted to to deal with. I wanted to explore what that's like. What is, first of all, if you're a 21-year-old woman and you fall in love with a 15-year-old boy, what's going on in your head, right?
Right.
Like, how is that okay? Like, I looked at my kid and I'm like, oh my God. But it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. So I wanted to kind of write about that. And then of course for the boy, it's just a very different experience because all of a sudden for the first time they feel needed or wanted or adult,
Right.
you know, and in a, maybe even in a position to take care of someone
Right.
instead of
And at the
being the
same
one.
time, I
Yeah.
think they're pushing parents away.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk, to their parents that much anymore. They don't want to tell them everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
So basically everything comes from a place of fear as a mother in this book. Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also this one takes place in a small town, and like it says in the description, Laney has moved from NYPD and to get away from the big city thing. But you also have an inspirational husband who's does detective work, I'm assuming. And
Yeah. So
yeah,
he was in the NYPD. My husband was a detective and he was an undercover detective. And he was not even like part of the inspiration. He was the inspiration because he used to tell me all these stories about his life as an undercover, buying crack on 42nd Street. And all his stories were just crazy. And he would come home and he was always just so amused and he'd be like, I can't believe this just happened to me. And he'd tell me about it. And for years we were like, well, we have to write this down. And finally I'm like, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm just going to give you a sex change and do it. So that's what I ended up doing with him, with his stories, is
yeah,
giving them to my character. And I mean, basically anything she goes through has really happened in one way or another.
yeah. I
Sort of, kind of,
that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. It was very cool. It was cool for him too, because then he actually listened to it on audio, and I could see he'd be like, "You put that in," you know?
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, is there any other like research that you have to do on your own?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Because obviously, you know, I write about corruption and the mob, and that I do have to research, and there's a plethora of data out there. I even started reading actual, court cases and the data from the court cases of different, um, whether it was the mob or cops or corrupt cops or whatever it is. I was just like reading tons of it, and you can't make this stuff up. You put this stuff in the book and people are like, oh, that's very creative. I'm like, no, that actually literally happened. Like
Yeah,
people did this stuff and worse. So yeah, that I actually really enjoy because you're just like, okay, I'll put this in.
oh, that's crazy. So that's really interesting. What is the most recent rabbit hole of research that you've gone down?
So I I I love researching crimes and the mob, and I just started reading about, basically what was the French Connection and pizza parlors. So I don't know how much you're familiar with. No, okay. So I love this story so much. So in starting with the 80s and I think continuing well into the 90s, um, drugs would travel, from wherever, from Europe into America, like into New York, and the Italian families needed a way to move them, so they would do it out of pizza parlors. So pizza parlors were these fronts for the mob, And so like you'd have like heroin or cocaine or whatever it is in your pizza parlor, and you would, not only was it like a good way to launder money, it was like a good way to transport the merchandise, because it would just go around in the,
Pizza
in
box.
the pizza boxes. And there's there's little pizza box, little tables that sit inside the
Oh,
pizza
yeah.
boxes too. Okay, so the story is that those are not just there to keep the box from folding in and collapsing onto the pizza. Each family had its own little shape. And so if you were buying from like the Bonatos or whatever, they would have like their little thingy, and then others would have their own. And so it was a way of kind of branding branding the merchandise. So that was like my lead. And then I started reading about that, and I mean, it's just crazy. So they would like, aside from transporting the drugs via the pizza boxes, they would be like, okay, I need to sell this much, heroin, because I would like to buy this house. So it was like a very kind of weirdly family
Like an
oriented business.
investment.
But it was an investment, like, I'm getting married, I need a new house, I need to sell this like couple of kilos, and then I'll buy this house for my wife.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because it all
I
comes
know that
down.
happens, and it's not really funny, but
Well, I
it's
think
interesting.
as far as story writing, what makes it interesting is that crime is not really committed for the sake of crime. It's committed for some other purpose, right? So that's the part that's interesting. And I love the fact that in this case, it was like to provide for a family, like literally provide a, place to live, a nice, whatever it is.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So you're also very well known for your short fiction. And you've published in like 5 journals and an upcoming HarperCollins anthology. Is that published yet?
Yeah, it came out. It actually came out. I have to I guess I have to update my bio. But it came out a couple of years ago. But I'm finally allowed to say that I got into the BoucherCon 2023 anthology.
Oh,
That's going to be
wonderful.
published this year. And I'm very excited about that, because those are exciting, because then you're like, there's like a list of people, and like in that other one, I was like there with Joe Hill and Michael Connolly, and in this one, it's like Anne Cleves.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's very exciting.
And so what is it you like about short fiction? Maybe that's a little bit different than the longer versions.
So I actually did not even consider short fiction as a career step until at one point I read some blog post, and I realized, wait a second, it doesn't take that long to write a short story, and you can submit it places, and then you can submit it to awards, and then you can get published, and then all of a sudden you start having publishing credits if you're when I started doing it, I wasn't published yet, and writing short stories and starting to get them published was such a great, first of all, it was an ego boost. It was a confidence boost. And then it really turned out to be a path to publication for novels, because it was kind of like a way to prove that, whoever was reading my stuff, that I had some credits.
Right.
Yeah. And, it does only take, for me, it takes me about a month to write a story, as opposed to like closer to a year to writing a book. So
yes,
so you have a lot more options for, a lot more opportunities for publication.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I know some other authors who've gone that route as well, and it's been good for their careers as well. So I know it's if you can master the art of the short, than because it's different than the longer
Yeah,
form. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's that different, but yeah, I guess depends on how your mind works. I guess for some people it's a little harder,
Mhm.
but in reality, it's really just a story. It's still 3 acts, and it still has a beginning, middle, end, and you still have your characters. And,
Yeah.
you know.
I think the hard part for me is that absolutely every word counts.
Yeah,
And you can't have a lot of extra words.
it's true.
Which is where I get lost. I get lost in the extra words.
Yeah, I start cutting. I start shaving all the way. Do I need that do I need that the? you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about Hide in Place, the first book?
Sure. So in the first book, it starts out also with a bang, just like the second one. And it starts out with the teenage boy basically walking away for like band rehearsal and not coming home. So the Laney, his mom, then has to deal with this. And because he's a quirky kid and has been in kind of trouble before, and has even run away before, the police and the school, their attitude is kind of like, well, he'll come back, or good riddance, or when he comes back, maybe we can talk about putting him into this special school for boys like him, and so every part of it is just horrifying to her, especially since she knows that he's a homebody. He loves being home, and for him to, it's just unthinkable for her that he would run away because she knows him. And so she begins, so there's actually there's 2 points of view. There's hers and there's the boy's point of view in the book. But there's also 2 timelines. There's the timeline from the moment he disappears, and then there's the timeline from a case that she worked as an undercover against the mob, which led to her quitting the NYPD. So those two kind of timelines work hand in hand, and you kind of have to see if there is a relation or if there isn't between her past work and what happened now. Maybe there is.
That sounds really, really cool. And I'm glad that my son is grown up now and I can read it and not be terrified.
Terrified. Yeah. Well, since you read the second one, I
Right.
think yeah, so a little bit of that tension is probably diluted.
No,
Yeah.
no, I don't think so. No,
Yeah.
I really look forward to reading that one too. Where can readers find you if they're looking for your books, or where can they find you online?
So I do have a website, and it's Emilya Naymark /author. But basically, if you just, my name is so specific that if you Google me, you're only going to find me, and you're only going to find my books. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I also blog with a group of other authors for the misdemeanors.
Oh,
So,
yeah, I saw that website.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
looks
So,
like fun.
yeah. So we blog there. Because God forbid I blog for myself. It's just somehow I need that group whipping me into shape. So
I know the feeling.
yeah.
And what is coming next? What do you have coming
Yeah,
out
what do
next?
I have? So I am working on a standalone right now. And it's in very good shape, but I need to, it still needs some work. And I'm very excited about it. And it has I guess like the pizza connection is connected to it.
Oh,
that was that rabbit hole. But yeah, it's set in New York City. I've left the small town and moved back into the big city, and got the mob, I've got kids, got all the stuff that interests me in it. So hopefully it'll be interesting to readers as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, we're really looking forward to that one coming out too. And it was just lovely talking to you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. This
Yes.
was great.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Emilya. Bye now.
Bye.